guys. How's everyone doing? Thank you for joining us on a Saturday evening. Um, I'm pretty sure Saturday evenings weren't what Saturday evenings were back then. So maybe life it's a little easier to join us on YouTube. But thank you regardless. Um, we I think as you join us, I think I do want to start off by saying yes, the topic is representation of women in media. And yes, I am the moderator, a little ironic at the end of the day. But I'm so happy to have a panel of such amazing women here with me. And I'm so excited to get this started off. Um, I just want to start off by introducing our panel and a little bit about myself and how I kind of ended up, because that's how I like to think of it. Hi, I'm Abhishek. I work for a company named Open House, which is an ed tech company here. And what we are doing is we're trying to reimagine how learning works. So every day we work with students all across Kolkata and Bangalore and very soon pan India. And it's been a very exciting journey. And hopefully, what I bring to this conversation is that the conversations that I've been having with the students of tomorrow, uh, I think for me personally, everything is changing. And one of those greatest factors was seeing Anjali, an 18-year-old running an organization like Full Stop, trying to destigmatize menstrual hygiene and conversations around it. And I saw this because students who were part of Open House would come up to me and say, "Hey, you should go talk to her. She's awesome." And for them, she's like a superhero. And I came on, I went live with her and had one of the best conversations. We went to do a bunch of campaigns together. And yada, 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 we have arrived here. And this is one of the, I think this is one of the best panels we can have. And I hope I don't miss out on introducing everyone in the most spectacular manner. But for starters, we have Avanti, who's a Bombay and Boston based artist. And I think besides the intro, I think the what you started off with was such a better note. I loved how you said that I love making music, but as someone on social media, I am a person who is worried about what kind of impact I have on my younger audience, and I love to be real about that. And I think that is a really really nice message to send out. We have Kareema with us, and Kareema is on the rise. Like, I think as a content creator, she is on the rise. I think everyone knows Kareema from her awesome videos, whether it's the Rich Auntie and every little bit of it. And I think I myself got addicted to Kareema's videos because she'd have this magic to take the most like mm, how do I say this? Like, things people don't like to usually talk about and make them so that everyone can digest it. And that itself is a super magical kind of thing to have. We have with us Yamini. Yamini might have been a dentist by profession, but she is now the ideas editor at She the People, which is, I think, the go to place if you're looking for stories on women. And lastly, we have Siddhi Idnani. And Siddhi is an Indian film actress and model. And I think she's going to also bring such an interesting angle to what it is to be a woman in the film industry today. I think every one of y'all come from different sectors and like different professions. I would love to have a candid conversation with everybody here. I'm super nervous as always, and I'd like to think of it as just sitting on a beanbag with a bunch of friends and having a conversation. But to continue from the conversation that where we started off somewhat, Avanti, I actually want to ask this question, and let's get straight into it. Do you think social media has now presented us this duality, and it's also giving a voice to all of these people who are trying to make body positivity, more worldwide, and it's promoting women everywhere and this entire voice, but it also comes with a darker side. Do you think it's made it better, or do you think it's for the worse?
Huh. Two very black and white options. I think, everything is always across a scale. Thank you for the question. I think two things, right? I personally, so I only joined social media when I was about 16 or 17, and I started, Instagram professionally and everything a couple of years ago, right when I was in college. And for me, I think I cherish the fact that I went through my young teenage years and didn't have to deal with the pressures that young women have to face today and young people generally, because it's become such a normative part of society that it's hard to escape. And while that's incredible because it's giving a voice to people's stories and their platforms, and you can be a creator in any capacity, and I think that's amazing. I think one of the dangers that's associated with it is at such a young age holding yourself up to such a high standard and not recognizing that a lot of life on social media is not real as an REAL, but it's real as an REEL, right? And a lot of it, because there's so many folks younger and younger who are getting the incredible attention that they deserve, I think it holds younger girls to a higher standard. I'll give you an example, right, with TikTok, which is an awesome platform, depending on the types of content you consume. Some of the biggest stars in the world are 15, 16, which is incredible on one hand, but on the other hand, a lot of girls I've seen, especially when it comes to body image, don't realize that at that age, that fast, that quickly, you get access to a huge audience. You also get access to a lot of capital and money, which allows you to then have access to things to, there are a lot of these girls are getting beauty treatments and things of a certain nature that aren't attainable for everybody. And that to me is scary, where that becomes the standard. So there's always good and bad, but I think it's figuring out a way to keep it in check and to also have, like you mentioned, many role models on the internet who stand for a variety of options.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Um, I think I want to just straightway segue into Karima here because I think she does this on an everyday, and I think she, as chilled as she seems on social media, I'm pretty sure she'll have some more insights for us when we look a little behind the curtains. Karima.
Um, I think obviously there's pressure in terms of there was this one like incident which I noticed, and I had some epiphany where I thought when I did male characters, when I would paint on a beard and I would leave my hair open or whatever, I would never feel conscious of how I was looking when I uploaded the video. But whenever I would just be myself, I would always be like, oh, let me edit the video a little bit extra. Maybe the side profile doesn't look as good. But I never cared about what I was looking like when I was a male character. So these things really made me realize how people would perceive it, because so many things for women have become about our appearance and all of this. And of course there's empowerment that comes through it. Like I feel extremely empowered when I feel bold, when I look good or whatever I think is good. But at the same time I know that there's this added pressure, so I myself sometimes I'm so confused of where to draw the line for myself and to not put undue pressure on myself to be a certain way or look a certain way, and at the same time feel empowered. It's just, yeah.
And has that happened already?
In what sense?
In the sense that have you already felt the pressure as you've grown, and it has been a little stratospheric? Has it felt that that pressure is creeping in to be a certain person, to be a certain way?
Mm, I would say yes, but if you exist on social media, it comes with pressure. I don't think there's any way that you can escape that pressure. Um, but to retain some form of like your sanity, I think it's just best to surround yourself with people who are constantly, and when I say constantly, I mean like literally every half an hour telling you that it's okay, or it's okay if you do this, or it's okay if you need to maintain that authenticity. Nobody, you should be yourself and it's all good. But that constant reminder, something that's very necessary. The more you grow, the more like eyes are on you, like you just keep feeling watched. That's also a big part of social media, that I feel like I'm sleeping but I know that somebody can access me existing on video. Like it's just such a strange thought if you think about it. Um, so yeah, I think that pressures of course has creeped in, but to maintain that balance is to constantly have people to remind you that it's chill, essentially. Yeah. But there's no escaping the pressure at all. I don't think there is.
I actually didn't think of it that way until now, and now I'm gonna like, I feel like taking down some of those videos when you put it like that.
Yeah.
Um, but from here, like, there's a very interesting point that at the age of 15, 14, people now are getting their 15 minutes of fame, and I think it's a little, it's not as traditionalist as it was, because it's almost like, and here I think Siddhi can offer so much into that world, because I think there was a huge route that people would have to take towards popularity. But do you feel like now that being cut short, um, a has it reduced these walls for women to go and just get popular and get famous faster, but does that also come with a downside where they try to very quickly maybe overtly sexualize, or just very quickly try to present what they need to get a greater number of followers?
No, for sure. First of all, I'm extremely sorry. I'm in this interior location in Tamil Nadu and I've just lost my electricity. So I'm literally using my phone flashlight and doing this interview, this panel discussion. But having said that, it's a very interesting point, and I've been saying this time and again that unfortunately we have been living in a patriarchal world for centuries. All of us have been conditioned in a particular manner wherein you know we've been told, not directly by our parents or something, but our parents through their parents have been told time and again that you know what, uh, आदमी मतलब मर्द करेंगे तो ठीक है, but women यार नहीं यार ठीक है ना, it's fine. So over time, generation after generation it's improving, but since centuries, since we've been conditioned in a particular manner, it's very very difficult to break out of it. Having said that, coming back to your question, whether social media has made it easier for us as women to be to have access, for sure, 100%. Today, I can just pick up my Instagram and perhaps just reach out to any director, any producer, any casting director on Instagram DM and just be like, hey, whether they see or not is a secondary situation. But as per my knowledge, everybody checks their direct messages. Everybody goes through that. Whether they reply or not is again, substantial. But um, of course, in respect to access, it has made life a whole lot easier for all of us. We can put up our content. I can put up a dance video. I can just pick up, record a acting clip, a monologue, and put it up on social media, and it'll be so easy for them to just go through it. And I know of so many people in the acting industry who have bagged the biggest roles because of social media. Your TikTok artists, your Instagram influencers are doing like big music videos today. And like 5 years ago, probably it would have been so much more difficult to even approach a casting director, let alone land a job. But of course, there's a flip side to everything. And with so much kind of space and availability, there is a lot of pressure. There is a lot of pressure to have your Instagram aesthetics in check. You need to be perfect in every picture because you know that you're being watched. Kareema rightly said that you are being watched even when you're sleeping, even when you're like 6 a.m. in the morning just woken up, you are being constantly watched. And being a public personality, you have to be so careful about what you post because that's the kind of perception that you give the audience to have of you. Whatever you put is what they perceive. So that's exactly, and that subconsciously really really plays in your mind because I'm like, should I post this? Is this extra information? Should I not post this? So that kind of really really messes with your mind, and that is exactly when you need to draw a line and realize I want to be my own person. Now, how people accept that is none of my concern, but I have to be authentic to myself. And only then will I be able to do justice to anything that I want to do.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I think especially where you ended it. But do you think that there's this fear rising very slowly, which is I want to be authentic to myself, and this is the content that I want to put out, versus, of course, I want to be authentic to myself, but my content can't be absorbed by so many people. Like 1.5 million people want to see me twerk. Why not just do that? Do you think this is just getting out there and becoming a more common mentality?
Very honestly, all of us go through something like this in our lives, especially because we've been handed over social media at a very early age in our lives, and the generation after us, it's a different conversation altogether. But when I started off, there was this thing that, oh my God, am I looking too fat in this? So should I just cinch my waist just a little bit? There are 100 apps that you can use just to make yourself like completely perfect to put it up on social media. Over time, year after year, you realize that, what, that it just doesn't feel right. I'm not feeling real. I'm not feeling authentic. And there's this click that you have personally when you realize that, what, I no longer care about what you want to think of me. I'm just going to be 100% authentic to who I am. And if that's not okay with you, unfollow me, you know but don't, trying to be someone else just kind of plays with your mind to an extent where you just lose yourself completely, and you don't want that happening.
Right. Absolutely. Um, I think from here, I want to ask a question to Yamini, because Yamini, you're getting to see the field at almost like every day from a very wide angle camera lens. And you're seeing stories coming in every day from different parts of our country, if not the world. And I just want to ask you, do you think it's getting better?
If you ask me, let me take up from where we left the conversation. कि मर्द करे तो ठीक है, औरत करे तो बवाल हो जाता है. If you've been following news for the past 2 days, the biggest trending story in India is that of a man running naked on a beach and then being praised for his physique. And then there's a woman who got arrested for obscene shoot. The story, today a case was also filed against Milind, but the story is not that they both chose to run nude on a beach, or they were they had to face legal consequences. The story lies in the comments that they got on social media, because this is all about social media. If you read the comments that were given out to Soman, it was mostly praising him for his physique, praising him for his boldness, and then eventually the legal side of it caught up with him. But when you see the comments that Poonam Pandey got, she got rape threats, she got shamed on every level, and the outrage that she faced, not even when she had gone all out. It was not even a completely nude photo shoot, but the comments were much more worse than what Soman got. So somewhere I think society is much more sensitive when it comes to women's bodies, and it feels the need to police them from every possible angle. It's not just about stripping down, even when you're wearing clothes. What kind of clothes are you wearing? What, the length of your skirt, to even if your legs are showing. I think women earn all kinds of nasty comments from every aspect on that. And if the way forward is educating young people in this country, both boys and girls, about their agency when it comes to social media. I think it's not enough to just give your child a phone, or from a parent's perspective, but we need as a society and as a country to educate our girls as well, to know what they are putting out there on Instagram, what kind of reactions, even though they are wrong, they should be prepared to face. The change that we seek in society is not going to come in a day or a year, or maybe not in our lifetimes. So while we push for the change, it is also important that we teach the coming generation from our experience, who will be social media natives, of what they are up to. It's wrong, but the fact is that's the kind of real world they'll have to walk into.
Yeah. I sometimes wish I could, like, at least in this moment, um, it's so difficult to sometimes hear these and then just come up with another question, because it's a glaring reality, uh, and it's so sad. And no matter how much sometimes we think and we talk about it, I think there's always, like, a downside. um I really hope, and I think that it's amazing that you also said um, that we need, that the next step is to educate, and hopefully the next generation will grow better. I want to ask you, but it has been a while. Do you think that it is getting better, or is it just
No, it's
is
not,
that
because we are still stuck in where we were 25 years ago. Milind Soman was sued for posing naked for a magazine in 1995. He's still been sued to pose naked. I think we're going around in circles. Social media is just another avenue for patriarchy and sexism and misogyny to catch up with women. Yes, there are men who are more sensitive. Yes, the queer community, women have more visibility on social media. But as it is a tradition with patriarchy, patriarchy always puts up resistance, no matter what platform it is. So I think when you look at the bigger picture, the kind of progress that we have made is very minuscule. I'm not sure if you can even call it that we have become better.
yeah, it's yeah. I think something that I would personally like to hear also, and please also feel free to catch off on anyone else's point as well. I would like to become as redundant in this conversation as possible, but I think there's a lot of individuals here. I mean, in this panel, I think I would want to know, and I'm pretty sure y'all would, because I think when every time I go live, there's always like a there's at least 10 people. Oh, hey, look who's back! It's Maggie here. Oh, yeah, and that happens every time. But I think what I learned from my past few lives is that, oh wow, women get it so much worse, and I feel like I don't even mind it as much when I started seeing some of the hate comments, and people started sending it to me that, hey, this is by the way some of the stuff. A, can you, and maybe Karima, we can start off with you. Can you talk about maybe like your worst experience with, a troll on media, and how you reacted to it, and maybe what you've decided is going to be your stance to this kind of stuff and messaging.
Oh, it's always been very amusing to me. Like, I'll go live, I'll talk about something really unrelated, and there'll be three comments about my breasts. Like, it makes no sense. There is no logical connection to talking about somebody's body, regardless. But I'm just saying, like, where does it come from? Like, where does it, like, where do you start thinking about the fact that you just want to comment on somebody's breast out of nowhere? And it's always been quite, I've been a little bit like, why, firstly, and secondly, it's just like you just want to talk about women looking a certain way all the time. The worst experience I can think would have was my first like viral video that I put up I was not intending it. I was at 2,000 followers I think at the time, or a little bit more I think, and it went viral, and I was not dressed up or like I don't know what it was. Regardless, people were just like, oh, crow faced and piggy faced, and I don't even know what all. And it was funny because I was talking about feminism, talking about how people constantly judge women for existing and just being themselves. And it was so ironic that the only takeaway that you get from an 11-minute video talking in depth about like the nuances in society about gender discrimination was that you think you don't like my nose. Mm, so usually it's really funny, like people really reduce women's value to their appearance and to whatever they are saying. The most important thing that will come out of it is potentially something that you can comment on, because if you see a successful woman who is stating an opinion, or if you just see a woman being herself or trying to be independent, the first instinct happens to be let's take her down in some way or the other. And what is the easiest way to do that then? Just comment on something that you cannot potentially change immediately, which is your appearance. So I think there is obviously a severe, like, it's violent, I think. Like, hate on social media is extremely violent, and it shouldn't be trivialized. I think it's problematic to a very, like, to a fair extent, and it can really bring people down. And yeah, I think it's a problem. It's definitely a problem, especially against a lot of women.
Yeah. before someone like wants to chime in on that, had a little bit of a side question, which was, but what was your stance? My stance became that no, the moment it happens, I will call it out on chat, because these are students. The moment it happens, I will call it out and then remove the person or wait for the person to reply. What's been your stance to like almost like tackle this problem?
Um, so I've been very grateful for the kind of following that I've had, and the kind of people that support me and my work. And I will, it like a lot of times people have defended me on social media, and I've been lucky enough to not get as much hate as, which is again like we are being grateful for a decent standard. But so in that sense, I haven't received anything that wild, but usually I have ignored it, or I have called it out, the if it's happening on a live or something like that, I have instantly called it out. I think it depends on moment to moment. Sometimes you don't feel like doing that emotional labor, calling somebody out, sitting them down, telling them this is why it's wrong. Sometimes you just need to ignore it, tell your friend and talk about how that's a stupid thing to say, or you actually educate that person. But I think that burden is only on the person experiencing it, the victim who is receiving that kind of hate. So personally, I choose to do it as in when I feel like doing that labor, or choosing to ignore a prejudiced person.
Yeah, thank you so much. um I want to open it up to anybody else also who'd want to share how they tackle with hate or troll comments. Um, I think it's definitely an issue, and I think most of the times, and I think that's the scary sentence. And I think here, please correct me if I'm wrong, but oftentimes it's easier to get attacked because you've become popular uh, by the virtue of being a woman, and I think that's when you kind of like get attacked faster. Would someone like to take it from there? Yeah, Avanti. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. So, one thing that's been interesting to me is that I echo everything you said, Kareema, and I'm sorry you've had to deal with situations like that. But honestly, your content is super inspiring, and I know you're really changing the path for a lot of young people and makes a huge difference. I find that women on social media and in media in general are held to a lot of double standards, as of course Yamini pointed out when it comes to the recent situation, but in many other forms as well. And it has no age barrier. I'll give you an example. So I care very deeply about education, health, and a bunch of different things. And I have conversations with some of my family members around certain taboo topics such as sex, sexual health, mental health, things of that nature. And a video with my grandmother recently has been doing very well. And I'm extremely grateful for a lot of the support, especially from the young generation. But you will have the comments that people will give, basically certain kinds of threats, certain kinds of things. And to an 87-year-old woman as much as to a young 20s woman. And to me, I'm just like, wow, okay, clearly age is no barrier for you. Nothing is a barrier. It's just because you feel like you can hide behind a screen. There is a certain sense of you feel emboldened in a way, and you feel like you have a sense of power. And I think my instinct at first with a lot of things through my career thus far would be to either respond or to delete. But I think sometimes that gives more fuel to fire. If you ignore, depending on the severity of the situation, right? If somebody is threatening somebody in my community, I do not stand for that at all. But if somebody is leaving, pardon my language, just like a rundy comment on whatever, great. I'm not going to respond to that, because if anything I say will just add fuel to their fire. And that's what often a lot of people want. They want that attention, and um, they want to feel seen in a way that isn't healthy, and that is extremely wrong. The other thing, when it comes to double standards is they often, I think there's a lot of hate comments online when they feel like a person cannot do both. I see a lot of hate comments for folks who've come up through a certain industry, whether that's, a Sunny or several others who've come up through certain industries and now are doing things that are more intellectual, get a ton of hate. Get a ton of hate because they're like, I only know you because of your body. How can you be engaging into intellectual discourse when it's like, hello, a woman cannot just be beautiful or smart or whatever it is. I also do I just graduated from Harvard this past May, and I do a lot of educational content as well. And then I see on a lot of my music stuff, there's people who started to comment, oh, look at the size of her boobs, or oh, look at this, oh, look at that. And similar to Kareema, I feel very grateful that the community is very active and, defensive, and I'm grateful to that. But it shouldn't have to come to that, where you hold people to a different standard, where you assume that someone is X, therefore they cannot be smart. Someone is smart, therefore they cannot be something else, whatever it might be. Understanding and accepting women as holistic human beings and the same privileges that are afforded to our male counterparts would be lovely to see on the media, not reducing us to, as Kareema said, a body or something totally different based on your picture.
Yeah.
I'd like to add on to
Sorry.
that what Avanti said. It just genuinely makes so much sense, and especially talking about from the movie industry, the movie fraternity. 90% of all the cinema made in India are hero-centric. Is hero-centric. Like you have one hero and there's a woman or probably three women dancing around him. And the story is made in a way that, okay, this is the hero and now we will make things around him. So yeah, we'll just add one heroine, we'll just add one song, we'll just put one villain. And that's how all of the films were made in the past. In the due course of time, I would like to even pinpoint what Yamini said. I'm specifically talking about the movie industry. Content has begun to change. We no longer have, of course, 70% of the films are still hero centric, but we still have those 30% films like a Dear Zindagi, like a Radhika Apte, coming out and doing these amazing roles, which are, which have a very, very important part for the woman.
I think where Siddhi was kind of like segueing into, and let me be very honest. I think we've gotten some audience questions, and I think in the most organic manner, you've actually answered some of the organic questions. But before I'm going to get to that, I wanted to actually hear from Yamini that we hear a little from Siddhi then about the change. So are these change, like are these instances of change happening in tiny pockets then? And are we kind of also then in our little bubbles from your viewpoint?
See, change is a relevant, a relative term. Change is happening, change is a gradual process. But what you see as a progressive change depends on where you come from, what your mindset is, and what kind of upbringing you have had. So, say for an urban girl, it could still seem regressive that women still have to, girls still have to wear dupatta, to cover their chests in home. But for that very girl, maybe it's a progressive thing that finally she is allowed to go out and study in college by her father, when her mother could not do it, when her mother could barely finish schooling. For her, that's a relatively better change. Her life is much better than she used to. Similarly, maybe, for an urban woman living in India, it's a big thing that she can have a platform to herself on social media. Maybe she faces a lot of trolling, but finally she can be herself. She can put out herself, she can express her sexuality, she can put, wear her identity on sleeves, and it goes for everybody across the spectrum. But maybe someone living in a better, much more progressive country, it's still regressive that women have to fight for it day in, day out. Women have to battle misogyny in their comment section. Women have to brave through rape threats to sustain their presence on social media and to have a voice that is uncensored. So I think that's a perspective. Uh, we do live in a bubble because, I do feel that maybe because of class, maybe because of caste, maybe because of gender or rural or urban, a lot of us have this disconnect from people around us. Even on social media, the millions, the people that you follow are guided by who you have been following, what your taste is, and what kind of content do you seek. So if you're seeking something a progressive kind of content, you're seeking comedy, you're seeking women-centered comedy, then you will be guided towards content that caters to your need. And in seeking that kind of content, you're going further away from other type of content where there's misogyny, where women are portrayed in poor light, or where maybe rural women are seeing videos that are that are progressive, but they are nowhere in your spectrum because you're not looking for them. So yes, the social bubble does exist, and I think the way to pop that, for lack of a better word, is to consciously try and be diverse in the content that you seek. Don't just try to follow people or seek content on basis of prompts that your social media platform is giving you. Be active in your searches and consciously apply, why am I seeing this on your feed? Why am I not seeing the other kind of content? Consciously seek the other kind of content because it's really, really important to bridge this disconnect. Otherwise, there's going to be a huge gap in between these bubbles, and it will be very difficult for us to find a common ground in near or distant future to be able to connect them.
Yeah, I think I love, as much as I love panels, which try to take things in the most abstract of ways. I love that um, people sometimes leave with ideas, like you're left when your audience watches you, they know that, hey, okay, this is what I have to do. And I think, Yamini, that's, I love that. I love that that is a moment that, that is something that people can remember, that, hey, and it's such a small question. And I'm firstly on the change thing, I think, yeah, I learned so much. It is a very relative concept. And should it was very open to me. It's just like it hit me very easily the moment you said it. And it, absolutely, if your explore section looks a certain way, question it. Question why it looks a certain way. It's such a simple but beautiful thing to just create that change. But I think to a lot of people, and as I see questions come in, I see that y'all are the everyday superheroes. And it's incredible how for not just women, but I also want to be very open for even men and for people like me. I think y'all are amazing, and I want to keep going along the line that Yamini started. What do you think? How do we fight it? How do you fight this? And please feel free for anyone to pick this up. I don't want to put you on the spot, in case you're thinking.
Abhishek, could you elaborate a little bit more on the this? Are you referring to change? Are you referring
Yeah.
to
what
parents?
are what are just the sorry yeah what are just the smallest micros that a person can do? I think it's very easy to say we must start a movement, and then it becomes so abstract of a concept, right? And I think the problem is that every talk ends with that abstract. Oh, it's a greater thing, it'll happen. But I love the idea that you can make small steps to cause, to be a part of a greater thing. But those small steps we can take every day. What, according to every one of y'all here, are those smaller steps?
I guess just to begin with, reason everything out, like question everything. Don't do it because it's the way to be done, right? Like, don't not go to the temple when you're PMSing. Question it. Why? What is the reason? Why am I not supposed to go to the temple? Or something as basic as the men have to sit for the puja of the new house. Why can't I sit? I'm the only daughter of my parents. I want to sit and I want to do the puja. So something as basic as that. And 90% of the times there is no answer to it. The answer is, but this is how it's done. And that's exactly where you have to stop and say, but no, I'm not okay with that. And just little things, because like I mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, because we've been conditioned in such a drastic manner, we forget to question. We are all right, but I am no longer okay with it. I'm no longer okay with not being heard. I'm no longer okay with being commented on an everyday basis. Yet again, I am not okay to be victimized. So there is a very fine line. I don't want to be a victim of the circumstances. I don't want to be like, oh my God, you know what? I'm just so upset that this is happening to me. No, I will make sure that this doesn't happen to me the next time around. So the idea is to just reason everything out, question, and only once you are 100% content with what the answer is, only then settle. Otherwise, keep questioning again and again and again. That's what I think.
If I can
Avanti, would you like?
interject, since Siddhi talked about this, daughters questioning why can I sit for my you're the only daughter. There is a story, a
I'm
lovely,
sorry.
lovely write-up from a woman. Can you hear me?
Yamini, I think we lost you a bit. Would you mind repeating that last point a bit again?
Yes. So I just wanted to add something to what Siddhi said about daughters questioning why they can't sit for puja, despite being the only children of their parents. A few years ago, we had this really nice write-up on She the People TV about a daughter cremating her father. And the way women commented to that, it was such a relatable story. We don't realize that, a lot of people are seeking answers for the same questions that we have. It's just that no one asked that question. And I think that's why it's really important, as Siddhi said, that, you need to ask a question and challenge the thought that you have been brought up.
Yeah. Yeah. Avanti, would you like to take it from there?
Sure. So I mean, I love the perspective that both Siddhi and Yamini brought up, and I think diversity of perspective is really important. Change, and fighting for that is really important. I want to bring up three super distinct areas. One is at the industry level. No matter what industry you're in, you may be in a creative space like us, or you may be in something totally different. I think often as women, we feel that if one person makes it, there's no space for another woman, or there's no space for somebody like us. And as a result, become extremely competitive and and often toxic online, even among our own peer community. And I think it's really important to find support within our industries. For example, I I think the first premise is merit, but if I can work with a woman, I will choose that every time, because I know that they're so underrepresented in aspects of the industry, in being audio engineers, producers, songwriters, so many different aspects of that, right? My business manager is a woman, and to me, it's not a gender thing, but it's a thing of creating a support system and bringing that up. Similarly with my artist friends, right? I think a lot of people, particularly as you're starting out, you feel like, oh, if this person's making it, there's no space for me. But that's not at all true. In fact, if we help each other grow, you're only going to create more and more spaces, and it's going to become so much more evident that the disparity that Siddhi was talking about, where it's a hero with three heroines surrounded, you'll have more equal representation, in film, social media, music, whatever it might be. The second portion is, related to what Siddhi and Yamini said, which is making sure that you are seeking out resources that are important and go beyond just your consumption of media. Media is incredible and social media is incredible, but it should just be a starting point. Make sure you're actually actively reading, doing research about things you care about to create an informed opinion for yourself. And much of that often comes from, seeking community online as well, such as, I mean, I love what She the People is doing. I love communities like Malini's Girl Tribe or Be Badass, or, there's a ton of different spaces online to exist in where you can find like-minded people, find kind of conversation starters, food for thought, and also form your own opinions. What often happens, which is what Yamini was referring to earlier, is because we click on the same kinds of things, we form an echo chamber. And like you said earlier, Abhishek, there's a bubble that's created, right? And if you're only hearing things that are similar to you, A, you won't understand the other perspective or even respect it because you're not being exposed to it. And B, you won't often be able to make an informed decision for yourself because you're only feeding it with what you already have as your, as your baseline, and you're forming opinions from what you're reading and consuming. So making sure that you are consuming things, but at the same time having an opinion of your own, I think is really important.
Yeah. Um, I think that's yeah, that's a lot to take away. I love how I'm just like I keep zooming in and out. I keep forgetting this is not a YouTube video or an Instagram video for a second, and I get so deep into it. I'm just like, okay, oh yeah, wait, no, I have to ask a question. I love it. I think there's so much to take away from this, and I'm so happy that you're bringing this up. um I want to ask a question which might. Oh, but before we do, also, Kareema, do you have your everyday superhero? What do you think? What are the little things one can do to fight it?
I think Avanti, Siddhi, and Yamini have given very comprehensive ideas of what um, we can potentially do individually. So I don't think I'll delve into that as such. I feel like what everybody together can perhaps do, just as women we are fighting every day, every moment of our lives is us combating something that is gendered. um I think what society can perhaps do is not think that this is a rivalry or this is a competition of some sort. I think it's important for people outside of just, of course, like women doing things for themselves is something we do all the time. But I think what other people can do is correct each other, be kinder. I think correcting men is something that um, is unfortunately the way that most men understand a lot of nuances in terms of locker rooms. And that kind of conversation is very different from me sitting down a guy friend and being like, hey, remember yesterday when you mansplained me? That was not okay. But a guy friend correcting a guy friend, sometimes I think these are extremely important. I think these are steps that people apart from women can take, because how much are we going to do? And i I think that sharing that burden of uplifting women is something that I think is a way to change.
Yeah, I
You know,
think,
I'd
to be
like to
very honest.
quickly butt into that statement. So I read this somewhere. I think Osho had said that women are superior than men. Women have the power to reproduce that men don't. The idea with which the world goes forward is only through a woman. And many thousand years ago, men were not okay with that. Men were not okay with having that, not having that power. So over the years, what they've done is that they're like, let them have that control, but make sure you take everything away from them. Make sure that the woman is the one who sits in the house and cooks and cleans and everything. See, physiologically, of course, there is a lot of difference between a man and a woman, but in terms of potential, we're equals, right? And what happened many years ago was that, okay, how do we break the kind of community that women probably might have, is by pitting them against one another. So this whole cat fight funda has been going on and on and on and on. A woman inherently somehow is never happy for another woman, and that is so wrong. Or else there's always this thing that if you put 5 to 6 women together, there will be 10 minutes of a conversation about something else, and on the 11th minute they will start talking about a boy or their husband. But men don't do that. Men talk about sports, men talk about the stock market, men talk about such interesting things. But for women, the ideal thing to talk about is a man. But that's just, it's just a norm that all of us as women collectively have to break out of. Like today, I want to be able to help another female counterpart. I want to be able, if a film comes to me which I'm not being able to do, I want to very consciously pick up the phone and call up a female actor friend and be like, hey, this is something that I'm not going to be able to do, so why don't you do it, because the script is good. And that's exactly the kind of change that I want to bring about. It's very minuscule, but if you think about it, something like this has never happened. Nobody is okay with another person doing well. But there's one concept that there's enough sunlight for everyone. Everybody is going to do well. You just have to be a genuine, nice person. And the idea to get feminism or equality is only by uplifting one another.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, and here, feel free to rip me to shreds. But there's a small part which hurts, whenever you say that, because when you say that, I know why you do it, and there's so much context behind it. But for the youngest people who are watching us, I feel like when I read a script, I don't want to say, oh, I wish I need to call a woman. I think I want to say, who can nail this like role? It's Siddhi. And I think it should be devoid of gender. And again, I'm open to it, to absolutely hear a person say completely like, hey, no, that's wrong because of this. And I feel like we're trying to play the balance game. I think, and if I'm not wrong, I think we're trying to now tip, like we're doing equity. Like, hey, let's try to get it back in our favor, because if we don't fight back harder than ever, we can't. Oh, but I want to say that um I wish it was. I wish that wasn't the world we were living in, and I definitely understand why it might have to be. Uh, Please feel free to destroy me, anybody who would like to. But I want to just put this thought out. I do understand the rat race mentality; it's everywhere. But I feel like the real world I want to live in is the one where I can pick up a script and say, Kareema is the best person to call for this, devoid of gender, and to work towards a more gender neutral society. Um, do you all
Um,
have thoughts there? Yeah.
yeah. Abhishek, very nice, beautiful thought, but unfortunately, like, this is not how we're, like, this is not the utopia we're living in. I would love it if people didn't look at me as just a woman or an object or how I look or what I am, with just ingrained in only and only my like female existence. I would love that. I would love to be just a person. I feel like the ground level dream that every woman really just has is that please just consider me a person, could you, um, but it's not the case, and that's the unfortunate part. And at the surface level, a lot of bigoted people have often said it's you using your woman card, and you why you want to do affirmative action, and it's you like just pushing women because they are women. But like you said yourself, that there is so much context to it. I do think it's extremely important for people to understand that it's not us playing the woman card. It's us realizing that you've been here forever, and unless we reach here, it's never going to be equal. So to get here, we'll have to push each other, and we'll have to lift each other up, and we'll have to give opportunities. Because if you think about it, right now you're even saying that I would consider Siddhi or Kareema for a role. But maybe like 50 years ago, that role would have probably been us in extremely objectified, sexualized ways, and that would be it. Right now, there's even potential for us to be empowered characters in pop culture. And there is a potential of us auditioning and talking about actual issues. But even then, it's going to eventually come down to some way of like some kind of um but yeah, just that, like, there is progress, but it's we're not here yet. We're still here, and to reach there, we're going to have to keep pushing each other. So there's just no two ways around it. If we don't live in that utopia.
Yeah. If somebody doesn't want to continue on that line, I think also from what Avanti was saying, I think the best part, the point where I think I could also just like very honestly pick it up was when I started being vulnerable. And I think that's the thing that we miss out a lot of times, is that it's okay to be vulnerable to a lot of things that happen. I think, and that goes back to my earlier point, right? I think, and that's in the beginning of the session, I think an audience question came in for Avanti, and we kind of answered it organically, but you can almost like feel the stress, and I'm going to just read this out straight out. So the question for Avanti was, you've done a lot of videos where you're talking to your grandma about wet ass pussy and stuff. Has there been any backlash from family slash older generations, and how do you deal with it?
Yes, for sure. It's been really interesting, because I mentioned, I think I recognize, and we were talking about this earlier, right? A sense of privilege that we have because of the exposure we have, whether it comes from class or exposure or urban areas. I have had a huge advantage by having been able to have these conversations. I don't live in a household where my movement is restricted. I have to, there's a lot of different social norms that I've been given the freedom to have, and I think that should be baseline, but that for a fact is not for a lot of people in our country and a lot of people in the world globally. And so for me, if I have the opportunity and the privilege of having had access to education, access to, progressive, forward moving thoughts, whatever that might mean to anybody, I want to be able to talk about that in a public space, right? So the video that you're referring to, for anybody who's watching who's not familiar, is I spoke with my grandmother. I had to react to Cardi B's WAP and Nicki Minaj's Anaconda, and we had a little bit of fun reaction, but also an intellectual discussion about objectification, about choices. And my grandmother is a doctor, and so I think has again the advantage of education and a more objective lens when thinking about the female body. And a lot of our conversations were around a woman's freedom and celebrating all aspects of a woman, right? In her opinion, a woman can dress however she wants to, but not doesn't have to do it for the other sex. You know, if a woman chooses to objectify herself, that's great, that's a choice, but that shouldn't be the framework that everybody thinks about a woman in. And we should celebrate a woman for much more than her body, much more than, as Kareema was saying earlier, than your tits and your ass, basically, and the piece of flesh that people observe you as, you know. And it's been interesting because, of course, there is backlash online, but for the most part, I've been super grateful. That video is almost at 1 million views now, and most people have been extremely supportive, and in fact, have been sharing it with a lot of family members, because I think, especially in India, being able to see an open dialogue around things of that nature between generations is really reassuring, that you can bridge that gap and you can have those conversations and be open about it. I know people have used that as a starting point to talk about sex with their parents, or to talk about consent and, you know, things of that nature. And on the flip side, just today, my parents have been receiving messages from, you know, people in their friend circle or family friends or relatives and things, talking about, oh, you know, I knew Avanti as a baby and she had such lovely Indian sanskars and values, and how can she be having this conversation with her grandma? Oh my God. And I'm like, wow. In fact, my grandma was over today and she was just like, ignore those people, they don't understand anything. I'm so grateful that, you know, there I have that support in family, but it plays a toll. And I would be curious to hear all three of your perspectives, actually being in the public eye, right, in some capacity. Of course, it comes with its pros and cons, but how have you dealt with it personally, if you've had, you know, people saying things against you, and how have you encouraged, or almost in fact trained, your family to be okay with it? I've had to have conversations with my family that by me choosing to do this, people are going to say things to you, and I'm firstly sorry for that, and secondly, here are ways that we can talk about how to approach these situations, you know, being public about a relationship online, being public about whatever these things might be. And anyway, I'm just curious, if you don't mind, Abhishek, me throwing that question to
Not at
the
all.
other panel.
Not at all. Absolutely.
Just like how you personally navigate that with friends, family, your close circle, and the world beyond.
Well,
I'd like to begin. Okay, Siddhi
it's
can go
a
first.
go ahead, Yamini, no, not an issue.
No, please go ahead.
Okay, so you know, so this is very interesting because I started my journey with a South Indian film, and it's really funny that people in the South have kind of it's super silly, and it's very, they have this addiction pictures like Siddhi Nani hot pictures, and then there'll be like a bunch of these hot pictures, and it was very alien to me. And I was sitting with my mom and dad after the release of my first film, and you know, I was excited enough to Google myself, put this up, and my parents are sitting next to me. And it was just so refreshing and pleasantly surprising to hear my parents say that, you know what, this is the flip side of fame. And since you're getting into it, you need to be prepared. So, very honestly speaking, I thought that I would have to have that conversation with my parents, that listen, guys, this might happen, so be prepared. But I was so pleasantly taken aback when they came and told me that this is something that you need to be prepared for. And think about it consciously, that if you're prepared to take these kind of, you know, criticisms or these kind of comments from people, only then probably pursue this industry, because it's ruthless. People are going to objectify you, people are going to, how much ever you don't like it, that is how it's happened. We would love to change it, but that's something one person cannot change for the entire world. But what we can do is prepare you. And I thought that that was just such a nice thing. And because my parents did that to me, I'm going to make sure that my children in the future are going to have the same kind of upbringing. So the thing is that it's just generation to generation, you just pass on these kind of morals and values, and hopefully things are going to be better soon.
Yamini, it's all yours.
And so for last 3 years, I do write 2 opinion pieces a day for Shitty people. And I think I've heard everything in between that you can hear about aspects like of married women to mental health and interpersonal relationships, mother-in-law issues. It's a lot to put out there. And when you write opinion piece, all of it is your personal perspective. Sometimes you draw from your personal experiences. Most of the time you don't. But every day you're putting those 500 words of what you think out there. So when you share these links on social media, it's very natural for your family to see it. And there's this always this palpitation that you have, oh my god, my mom is going to see what I write about sex, and a cousin or a brother-in-law is going to know that I have thoughts on adultery. So it's really awkward, but fortunately for me, I am renowned for a thick skin. I don't care what other people think. And if you want to put your opinion out there, you definitely need to care less about what other people have to say. Otherwise, you'll always be having second thoughts. The minute you start thinking, what is that person going to say about what I think? And that's where censorship begins, self-censorship begins. And that's how women recede into their shells and put out less and less of themselves. So thick skin is number one, and secondly, you have to sit down your family and talk to them. Fortunately for my partner, he could care less what I write. We keep our work lives separate. But for a lot of times, when you have friends and parents who are not used to of you being so opinionated, you have to just sit them down and talk to them and explain to them that this is very important to you. This is your bread and butter. This is your passion, and it would you would be unhappy if you don't do it. And I think when you put it like that, they understand that, and then they learn to tune it out even if it affects them. Because let's face it, they are also dealing with a certain kind of conditioning that they have lived with for their whole life. It's not easy for every parent or partner to not be bothered by a photograph that you put or a write-up that you put out. What you can do best is to challenge their perspective, or at least find a common ground where they learn to look away if they don't like what you put out.
Yeah, I think that's such a beautiful point. I think if I had to bring down to one word, that would be empathy. That on your road
Yeah,
to change,
true.
make sure that you're empathetic. And yeah, I think that's beautiful. I'm so sorry to have to cut this short a little, but I think everyone here does have prior engagements, and as the nature of a beautiful conversation, it does tend to get carried away a little. But I think I want to just spend a minute firstly thanking everybody who came here. Firstly, it was amazing for me. I wish there were like hundreds of people in front of you who could like stand up and clap, because I'm pretty sure everyone who's there on the other side would love it. But this has been incredible. It has given me so much to go back and think about. I can't begin to talk about all the people who might just be there watching. um, I think the most beautiful part is that while we look at media and while we see Ronda Rousey, while we see Serena Williams, and we see these grandiose like women everywhere, it's very lovely to sometimes just be able to just also relate to the everyday superheroes, and that's who we all are. And it's amazing to hear from y'all. And I think this has been a wonderful chat. um, as with this conversation, it is never ending, and I think if I had an hour, we could have still gone. But this has been amazing from everyone, and thank you so much. Um, I want to also end it on a small note that today I am representing Full Stop, an organization that is trying to do its little bit by trying to demystify and kind of like not create a taboo around menstrual hygiene. I have seen it with kids that I've interacted with, and it's amazing. Please head over and donate, and they're doing such a good job. But thank you to everybody who's been here, and have a good night. And hopefully everyone will remember all the advice that you left us with. Thank you so much, everybody.